Welcome everyone, and welcome to another Q&A with Qlik. Today's topic is Qlik Replicate Sources and Targets. I am one half of the hosted team for the Q&A with Qlik. My name is Emmanuel Herndon, and I'm a digital customer success specialist here at Qlik that focus on customers from trials to renewals, and in between making content like this Q&A. I'm not doing it alone. My colleague Troy is helping me. Will you say hello, Troy?
Of course. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Q&A with Qlik. My name's Troy Rainey, and I help out creating largely videos and webinars like this one. And we have an excellent expert panel for you today. We'll pass around, let everyone introduce themselves, starting with Dinesh. Could you say hi?
Hey, this is Dinesh. So I've been with Qlik for about a little more than a year and a half. I'm technical adoption specialist from the support group. So I work with support kit related cases and also help customers to kick off with their basic configurations and things like that.
Great, thanks. Steve?
Oh, hi, this is Steve Wynn. You guys can hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is Steve Wynn. I've been with Qlik for over 15 years. I'm the senior support engineer, mainly with Replicate and also doing with QDI and QDIC and all the great stuff. So specialized mostly in Replicate and QEM.
And Barbara?
Hi, Barb Phil, and I've been with Qlik for almost 8 years, and I'm in Florida. Used to be in New Jersey, for those who may know me, and I'm QDI tech support and adoption specialist for the Replicate family of tools and endpoints, yeah, that's it really. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Shashi?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Shashi. I'm with Qlik for more than 2 years now. I'm a senior support engineer, and I'm SME in Replicate and Compose.
Awesome. Well, we've already got a couple questions coming in, and we'll start off with the first one, but please start entering any questions you might have in the Q&A panel, and we'll address them as they come in. First question, where can I find a list of possible sources and targets? Steve, you mentioned you wanted to take that one.
Yeah, pretty much is that most of the source and target are in our user guide. Pretty much is that if you go to our website and go to Qlik documentation and just pick the products. Give example in here is Replicate, and on the left panel you go down to platform support and endpoint support. It will list your platform, source endpoint, target endpoint, and are they compatible with Linux or Windows, etc.
That's great. And I'll go ahead and post this link in the chat so people can have that.
Okay, thank you. There's a question that did not come necessarily in the Q&A panel, but it came in the webinar chat. And it says currently using Stitch data loader. Could Qlik Replicate replace Stitch or complement it? What is the upside for using Qlik over Stitch?
Bob, anybody else know about Stitch? I don't know Stitch products, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I believe it may be similar. So I'm sure there are some overlapping capabilities, of course. But I also think that there may be some uniqueness between that separate each other. I cannot tell you off the top of my head, though. Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know Stitch, so I don't know what is the similar and what's the difference. So I apologize.
That's fine. And that's always, I mean, we're here to try and address things live, but there's always the forum on Qlik Community. If anybody have any questions that we're not able to address, that's a good forum for them. But I'll move on to the next question. Do we expect to be addressing QCDI as well, or are we just talking about Replicate today? And I think we have experts for both. Just sorry to just take that question. Feel free to ask any questions about Qlik Cloud as well, but we're trying to stay on topic for Replicate. I'll move on to the next one. Is Oracle Autonomous, or ATP, database on the Qlik roadmap as a source endpoint? Anybody have any insight to that?
Checking real fast on that, Troy. I think there's some case that was already open on it, but I believe that particular endpoint is right now not supported.
Okay.
Yeah, that endpoint is not supported yet. Most likely is that what customer can do is open a feature request on our ideation, and so that if more management see that there's a need for such a platform, then they will consider the endpoints.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And Troy is now showing on the screen ideation. That's where you can go to put your idea in. So we move on to the next question. When updating an existing source that has tasks running to add a destination ID in the advanced tab, do we need to bounce the running task for it to take effect?
Update existing source to add destination in the advanced tab. Advanced tab destination ID. Okay, yeah, pretty much I can take that. Pretty much is that I'm assuming that this is in regard to Oracle endpoint, where they can set the destination ID for reading the redo logs. So pretty much is that anytime when you edit a endpoint, you definitely have to stop the task and resume the task for the task to pick up the new definition of the endpoints.
Great, thank you. I see another question came in through the chat. There are two different tools. It'd be really helpful if you could place all of your questions in the Q&A tool, but I'll go ahead and read it. Is there any way to use D365 Cloud as the source with the Attunity integration software on-premise? And if not, are there any plans for the implementation of that?
Barbara, do you know that endpoint, Barbara? Sounds like an IBM endpoint or something like that.
D365?
Yeah.
Is that a form of DB2?
See if they can quickly reply to us in the chat. But I'm not sure. There it is. Microsoft Dynamics D365.
Yeah, that's pretty new. I didn't never heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never heard of that yet. So yeah, it's the same scenario right there. If it's not on the support matrix yet, then it will be a feature request. I apologize.
Sure.
So it's not available yet.
Okay, we'll move on. I'll give Troy a minute. I think he's searching for something.
I just wanted to put here the list of supported target endpoints so people can browse themselves. And I believe I put that link in the chat for everybody so they can start looking through what is actually supported and available in our documentation.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to the next question. In the documentation, does it state which endpoints are supported for Qlik Cloud and which are supported for on-prem installation?
Yeah, we have separate user guide for on-prem versus cloud QCDI. So yeah, so we have to go respective ones and we can see which endpoints are supported. So the one which is being shown on the screen is for on-prem. So let me put the link for cloud.
I think Troy is already ahead of you right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's there.
So connecting to data sources, target platforms in your project.
Yeah, if we go to that connecting to databases.
Okay.
Yeah, that is for source. Yeah, and the next link is for the targets.
I'll go to this link and put that in the chat. There you go. Okay, thanks. That was a good question. So next question, I said there was a follow-up that stitches for cloud sources, not CDC. And I'll move on to the next. For a HANA trigger-based CDC, what's the best practice to follow in releasing a transport, like adding a new column or any maintenance task for a given table?
Darn it, Bill should be on this sound call.
And we're
Unfortunately, I'm not a big HANA CDC person. Bill is our HANA CDC portion. We might have to loop back and give you an answer that in the background somewhere, Troy.
Yeah, maybe I can try to answer that.
Yeah, thanks.
The
Go for it.
trigger-based CDC, yeah, we always reference the primary key columns. So any other change to the tables will not be affected. So yeah, you should be good to go. You can do it like a regular maintenance. It won't affect the CDC.
I'm also curious. The third part of that question says for any maintenance task for a given table. So I guess it also depends if there's any dramatic changes to that table. It could alter basically the layout, and therefore maybe a reloading of that table would be required. I think it's an answer, right?
Unless we change the primary key columns, I don't think the triggers are affected. So unless we do a drastic change on the table, we try to change the primary key columns and all those things. Yeah. Unless we do that, yeah, the triggers won't be affected.
Agreed.
Triggers are on the primary key.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Are there any architecture diagrams that shows how replicate gateway device, Linux box, can be deployed in and around on-premise or in cloud environments like Azure or AWS?
I believe we do have some type of diagram on that, Denise. I just don't remember on top of my head, but we did have a practice session where they show a diagram. I'm not sure if that's able to share out or not. That's the only thing. Denise, do you know if we can share?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me.
The user guide should have it.
Well, I know that for the replicate gateway device, which is Linux box, that can pretty much exist pretty much anywhere, on-prem or on the cloud. It doesn't really matter to us as long as we're able to connect to it.
And that box has to be able to connect to your sources as well, right? If it's on-prem source.
Yes. Well, pretty much is the data gateway movement. So the data gateway new movement need to be connected to anywhere that is you connected to your source. Yes. Hopefully that answered Stefan's question.
Great, thanks, guys. All right, moving on. Next question: is there any error code list for the source endpoints, Microsoft SQL?
Interesting question. I'm not sure what error code they're looking for, but in terms of SQL Server, Oracle Server, etc., most of the connection using Replicate is going through the ODBC connection. So the error codes usually come out from their ODBC error themselves. Most of the time that when you see in our logs an error, it's all coming from the ODBC, the driver themselves. So I think that's what they're looking for in terms of error code wise.
And I'm just wanted to follow up on that. When you all as technicians don't understand an error code, how do you find out about what it means?
Well, pretty much I do exactly what great tech would do is copy that particular error code from the ODBC on Replicate and try to Google as much as I can.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. Yeah, we use Google.
We use Google. Yes, we use Google.
Most of the time, the error codes or the error messages are, from SQL itself. They're SQL error codes, and that's that would be like Microsoft SQL Server errors, typical SQL query errors.
We've got this. Shashi Googled it for us and came up with this, and I'll post that to everybody.
Yeah, I had a similar case earlier where the customer wanted it. So
fantastic.
Okay. Next question. Well, I think next question is a statement, so I'll read it. QCDI and the new data factory connectors are closer to the way Stitch works.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'll read the next one. It says, will the webinar be able for replay? Yes, the recording comes out next Tuesday. It will be on YouTube as well as Qlik Community.
Yeah, just to let everybody know, quick little plug. Thanks for the opportunity. Up here in blogs and events, textbook events, you can find under this past events tab, the recordings of all of our Q&A with Qlik sessions. And you could also go to the Qlik Support YouTube channel, and we'll post those recordings here as well. You can see all of our previous recordings on the Qlik Support YouTube channel. Just search
like and subscribe.
Support. Yeah, there you go. All right, moving on to the next question. Can or will we be able to use QVDs as a source or target? QVDs are that's a proprietary Qlik file for data.
Yeah, those are Qlik data themselves. Not sure. That's up to management in terms of that. I haven't seen anything in that nature yet, so I would just say no for now. But that would never know at this point.
I believe they are cloud compatible, but don't take my word for it.
Yeah, I believe they're cloud compatible. You're right, Troy, but not internal replicate wise right now.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What is the optimal way to leverage parallel load for large tables greater than 1 billion rows when the source endpoint is Oracle and the target endpoint is Azure Data Lake Storage?
Okay, so pretty much is that is how fast we can read the source and how fast we can write to the target, right? So pretty much in Oracle, you definitely want your reading from close to the replicate close to the source as close as possible, and then what you can do is you can leverage segment parallel load, and on top of that you can do a bulk array read, which is an internal parameter. So that it can read Oracle faster. Then from there, we can leverage the write to Oracle, Azure Data Lake storage at that point. Now, the best leverage that you, performance-wise, is to engage our professional service team so that they can understand what you're trying to accomplish and they can see what you're trying to move and look at your environment-wise and everything, so that way they can help you fine-tune your performance transfer level.
That's great. Thanks. All right. Someone gave us a little bit of follow-up to the D365 question that is a statement. Windows Azure does not allow a CDC connection to D365 yet. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Moving on to the next question. Is there a source to target data counts reconciliation check option in Replicate? Right now, we're performing counts check outside of the tool to get a count for that.
I think that would be more of it like a data remediation capability that currently Replicate does not have.
Yeah, this would be a good feature request.
Yeah, enhancement request.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, there's the ideation space on Qlik Community that we're referring to. I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat as well, just so everybody can quickly get to it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How does the table load order settings, low, normal, high priority, affect the table loading? Example, should large tables be set to the lowest priority? And another follow-up question, is this settings just applicable during full table loads or CDC as well?
Yeah, that's definitely just for full load only. And the purpose of the order is to allow you to give priority, basically, which table do you want to get loaded first? Now, the question is, which is better? Should I load my large tables first or my small ones? It's a depends type of answer. It could be that you need the data for the large ones first, so you may want to prioritize them. If the small ones are quick, you can prioritize them to be loaded first, and then allow the large tables to be loaded last. I think it really does come down to which of all the tables need to get loaded first due to business needs. So hopefully that answers your question there. Thanks, Thomas.
That's great. Thanks, Barbara. Sure. Next question. Is there a best practice document available to help make sure we are configuring new and existing source targets? Just feels like we're missing a setting.
Best practice.
And I saw that one coming in, and there was Michael Litz hosted a Qlik Replicate loading best practices, where I believe he looked at some of those options and gave some tips. That's called Replicate Loading Best Practices. You can find it on Qlik Community.
Yep.
And there's some chapters here you can see, and he talked about that a bit.
No, thanks, Troy. Now, add on to Matt's question. Give example is that existing source and target would be what Michael Litz has presented. Now, for configuring new source, target, and endpoint, if the source and endpoint is able to set up using ODBC connection outside Replicate on the Replicate server and is able to talk, then Replicate will be able to talk. We have many customers that try to set up endpoint, but the communication is not able to communicate with the target or source endpoint outside Replicate, and wondering why Replicate doesn't work. Well, if you can't set it outside Replicate, definitely Replicate will not work.
I would also like to add on to that, just saying that if you're looking for a best practice on setting up a new or existing source or target environment, everything is done in phases, sort of. So what you should do probably is just set up your source and target as plain vanilla. Take all the default options, and I'm thinking that the follow-up question is, since he says just feels like we're missing a setting, it may just be that you're asking maybe about performance or something. So I would think first start up as plain vanilla as possible. Just take the defaults. And then if you see behaviors such as latency or something, chances are then you need to go back in and look at some of the settings that are already there as defaults and maybe increase or decrease them, depending on what the behavior is of the task. So I don't think there's necessarily a best practices document in regards to setting up the source or targets, because with every customer and every source and target endpoint, it could be very different between customers or even between individual endpoints. So I don't think it's the best practice, but in my opinion, start plain, take the defaults, run it, see what happens. If it's not performing, then you can go back in and try to adjust some of those buffers or max file sizes, things like that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, also go through the user guide for the specific endpoints you are working on as well, right? So, for example, say ADLS as an endpoint. I think it has a particular setting inside that you can say, wait for this many seconds before you put it to the target table kind of thing, right? So you might think, I don't see anything making into my target, but in your configuration endpoint, you might say, okay, after 10 minutes, put it into the target kind of thing, right? So also go through the specific endpoint in the user guide just to go through the configurations.
And just to support what Dinesh is saying, there is also in that user guide, it also shows you what version of the ODBC driver is required. So if it says something like, oh, I need 11.5.6 for a DB2 ZOS source endpoint, don't try installing 11.7. It is asking specifically for 11.6. So I think that's another, maybe a best practice is follow the user guide, exactly what it says. There you go. Thanks, Dinesh.
Okay. Thanks to you all for that. That was beautiful. Next question. Is there documentation or helpful hints available to export a task from development Qlik Replicate to production Qlik Replicate to minimize build from scratch?
I think we have a lot of those on the form already. I can, let me just search that. Bear with me.
Might be something on the forum, and
I'm pretty sure there is, because
I think I've seen one as well. But I guess while he's looking, I can just talk a little bit about the fact that when you're exporting a task, depending on where you're exporting it from, like Qlik Enterprise Manager, or if you're just exporting from Replicate, you can say, if it's just Replicate, you can export and it, will bring the list of tables, and I believe it's without the endpoint definitions, but it does show the endpoints there, where you're pointing to from a source or target perspective, and then you would import it into your production environment. And then depending on what the business need is, you might need to either, load the task, do a fresh start, full load the task. Or if it's a CDC only task, you may just want to do an advanced run, start from timestamp, or start from now, meaning start from fresh, and then it'll start picking up the changes from that point onwards. But
and also, again, just to add another point to it, because I experienced similar situation as well, right? It's because you're talking about moving it from development to production. So if they're identical right now, and you're making some changes in your development, say you're adding some columns or whatever to make everything work as expected in the development, and now you're moving it over to the production, export and import, then be careful that that table might be reloaded in the production environment.
Correct. And also keep in mind, also, depending on what version is in your non-prod versus your prod, you should try to be going from like a QA, which should be probably the same version as your prod, because QA is designed to simulate what would happen in production as much as possible, of course. So I'm assuming that the version of Replicate they're using in that QA should be the same version of the Replicate in production. And then when you export it and then import it into production, it should work fine. Because if you're trying to export from a very old version, for example, the translation of it may not sync up right as you go to production. So you're going to want to test those types of things out, as well as you might need to go through a conversion process if you're going from like 7.0 to May 2023, an unsupported version to the most current version we have. You probably should go through like an upgrade conversion path to make sure that Replicate interprets that JSON correctly.
Great. Well, let's move on to the next question. Due to some limitations, our company is looking to move from SAP HANA log CDC to trigger CDC. We're concerned about triggers hindering HANA performance. Have any other customers have any issues with triggers affecting HANA performance? And if so, what suggestions do you have?
Now, if you ask me, like triggers are more performance effective than the CDC based. I have not seen any customers having any issues with performance of triggers, but if you have a large data coming in, so when trigger-based approach, we use two control tables, right? One is that trip changes, and the other one is a trip CDC log. So you need to make sure like you purge the data like in sufficient interval so that those tables doesn't get bigger. That's the only main thing. Other than that, yeah, triggers is much better than CDC based. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Manny, you're on mute.
Thank you. Next question seems to be maybe a support case, but I will read it. When using SQL Server as a source, sometimes the error source changes that would have had no impact were not applied to the target database. Refer to the that error table for details pop up. Even though the error says source changes that would have had no impact were not applied to the target's database, sometimes this results in recording getting missed in the target DB. Source DB is SQL Server and target DB is Snowflake. Any ideas?
I think probably all have some ideas.
I'll let you start, Bob.
Okay, yeah. My quick take is the purpose of that message saying, refer to the ATT rep apply exceptions is because it did not apply that transaction to the target. Now, why didn't it? Because it says there would have been no impact on the target. In other words, let's say you're running an update to a row that is not really there on the target, and your task settings may be set that if the row is not there, just write this transaction to this exceptions table so you can inspect it later and see, maybe look at the PK and search for it on your Snowflake target. It's basically saying that the row is not there to update. And your task settings have controlled the behavior of Replicate such that he'll write this exceptions record to this exceptions table. And it is correct then that that row did not get written to the target because it's not there it's not there in the first place. It maybe should have been. If you change the task settings, you can alter it such that if the row is missing for some reason, could be any reason, that we can convert that update into an insert. And then this way the row does get there on the target. That's my initial take on that.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Pretty much is that the task configuration by default is always going right to the exception table, the ATT rep exception table. And whenever you get that particular message, like Bob is saying, is that go to that particular table, look at what is the error message say. It could be that is primary key violation, could be I don't think primary, but it could be that insert issue or duplicate, or could be anything like that. So that's why you're not getting it to the target, because we're logging it to the exception table by default.
Correct.
Okay, great. Moving on. Any plans for using preload and postload script? For example, dropping and recreating index for a full load?
I believe we have the ability for you to control your task such that, let's say you're doing a full load. As far as a post load goes, you can tell Replicate to stop the task either before or after applying changes, the task will stop and not continue on with CDC. And then it gives you that opportunity of either manually creating if you need to, or in the replicate task settings, I believe there is also another option. I'm just going to double check that for a second.
Yeah, go ahead and check that, Bob. Pretty much is that I believe they're talking about endpoint as like SQL Server because you didn't re-index and so on, or Oracle. But currently, there's no pre or post in the replicate task themselves for that particular endpoint. That's considered a feature request. But give example, if you write into S3 target, we do have pre and post command for S3 target. So there's certain endpoint have pre and post, but right now the endpoint that you're talking about, I believe it is SQL or it could be Oracle. But then yeah, there's no pre or post command procedure at this point.
Right, and in the full load, the full load settings of your task, there is a checkbox that says, for a primary key or a unique index creation, you can check the box that says create the primary key or unique index after the full load completes. So maybe that might be what you're looking for. It's just something to check.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Why is a primary key or index required when replicating Oracle source endpoint to Oracle target endpoint? Some tables have no primary constraint or unique index, but Qlik forces us to create a unique key. Why?
Wow.
Bob, what do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced so many customer situations where there was no primary key or there was nothing unique on the target, and the latency was absolutely phenomenal. It was outrageously large, and basically it's doing table scans. It's trying to find a matching entire row of that data, looking for that match to perform an update, for example, or a delete. So even if the table doesn't have a primary key or unique index, you can just double click on one of the column names that you think has a greater chance of being unique. And when you full load or reload or whatever, get the fresh metadata to the target, it will make performance significantly better. And it doesn't matter whether it's Oracle to Oracle or not. It could be for any source going to a relational target. You want to have some sort of primary key, unique index, whatever, some sort of key field, so that table scans are not being run.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you, Barbara.
Sure.
Next question. Is there a pay-go option for professional service assistants? That might be, I don't know if you guys are that familiar with professional services, but it feels like that's a question for your account manager, because professional service offerings are really all about very specific to your needs. So
yeah,
there might be.
Yeah, I don't know. Hit up your account manager.
Yeah.
I mean, not that particular, but I know that a lot of customers buy a small to medium-sized chunk of hours, for example, and they can use them, an hour here or 2 hours there, maybe to ask some questions, get a little learning education in, or ask for a particular configuration of a certain endpoint, maybe spend 1 or 2 hours with them. So I know it's a very flexible process from that angle. I don't know if it's a pay-as-you-go, stick your credit card out like years ago.
But I agree. I was about to say the same thing. They are very flexible depending on your specific needs and requirements. So definitely talk to your account manager.
Okay, thank you. Commenting on the next question is commenting on exporting tasks. We use atomic scripts to automatically migrate tasks through environments behind the scenes. Our developers do not need to stop their task. I don't know if that was a question or a statement.
Well, Sounds like it's a statement and a question. So pretty much is that if they're using a back-end script or something like that to export. So exporting a task and importing is great. Exporting is just going to grab the information out of the information of the task themselves right now. So pretty much is that it could actually lead to the task that is already running, right? It's currently running. You can export a task that is currently running. That's no issue right there. All right. So when you import the task back, now, give an example. If you import the same task back into the server that's currently having that task, that's a totally completely issue. But you input that task back into a different server, no problem at all, because that task doesn't exist on the new server or another server. So exporting on a running task, no problem.
Okay. Next question. What are the differences between AWS DMS and Qlik Replicate?
Legal issue. I don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not. I know what it is, but I don't think I can answer it. So.
Is it fair for us to say ours is better?
Yes. Fair to say. Fair to say is that AWS DMS is very limited in terms of configuration-wise. Replicate have the full back end of the configuration-wise. DMS is just doing a minor portion of it. So yes, Replicate is a full-blown version in terms of AWS DMS.
Okay. Next question. I wanted to, before we go to the question right there, there was a question that popped up in the chat a while ago and I missed it. And it says, is there some way to write SAP system using API with our connecting direct in database? That was in the webinar chat. And I'll read it again for you might not be able to find it. It says, is there a way to write in SAP system using API without connecting directly in a database?
I don't think there is. Am I thinking out loud, Bob?
No, no, you have to connect one way or another.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole point of SAP is like having it very locked down. So you have to be able to have the whole connection.
Yeah.
Without connecting directly to the database, I don't think there is a way. But I'm not in a SAP system admin or anything like that. But I don't think there is. My answer is say no.
Unless they're asking about whether they can connect directly to a backend database, not necessarily. Well, sometimes you have SAP on the front end, you have the front end image, and then you've got the back end database environments, whether it's HANA, SQL Server, DB2, Oracle. Theoretically, yeah, I do have some customers that can go directly to the back end databases and not go through SAP HANA or, the SAP front end. But that's okay too. It just depends on whether the data is of any meaning. And you may also be missing some columns that are specific to SAP, and the backend database just has it in a different format or layout. So technically, physically, you could connect to those backend databases, but I'm not sure if
but
that's
also, I think the permission is also important to consider here, right?
Yes.
What level of permissions you have.
Yes.
Okay. Well, next question, and yeah, Manny, thank you for catching that. I totally missed that one.
No
for Kafka target endpoint, does anything get written to the apply exception topic?
Probably if there's an exception, and if your task settings tell Replicate to write any exceptions to that table topic.
So at least it's possible, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yes, it is.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah, we have to create that topic manually. I don't think Replicate will create it, but
I think
yeah,
you're
once
right.
we create it, it should. Yeah, it will do it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I guess is it possible using change tables if the target is Snowflake?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it was I don't know if it was a statement question, but yeah.
Use both.
And then
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I'll go ahead and read the next question. It says all CDC software requires a PI due to the same issue. Without a PI, you can also corrupt the target data.
What means by PI?
All right, well, we'll move on to the next one. In the exception table, the error is captured as 0 rows affected. Not sure why the record missing in the target. In the cases we checked, this has resulted in count mismatch between source and target. Source the record, while in the target, the record did not flow through at all.
0 row affected, same thing. So too much is 0 affected is that usually most likely it's going to go to the exception table again, where we the other question was we picked up on that. So most likely is that when you 0 affected is that if you read the log a little bit higher top, it will say something about 0 affected and look at your exception table. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah, I think all these scenarios will be better handled if we enable that upset mode in apply conflicts.
It's
It's
most of the endpoint will able to set up using upset right there. So most of the endpoint that gives them both Snowflake, SQL Server, Oracle, many of them allow upsert, so you can use the upsert so that you won't see that 0 row affected right there. Because 0 row affected is usually just a duplicate key, missing keys, etc.
Be a delete, and the row's not there to be deleted.
Yeah.
I was on mute. Okay, thank you. We have a few more questions. We try to get to it as quickly as possible. The next question is not quite understood the response regarding HANA performance when using trigger CDC. Could Sashi please explain or provide some white papers regarding this? Our SAP instance has around 10 to 20 million changes daily.
Yeah, we have other customers who have even more than that. But yeah, if you are looking for a specific white paper, I can find it. I can share it offline.
Okay, we'll make sure to have that link within the videos. That way you will be able to see it when the recording comes out.
Okay, next question then. Have any of your customers experienced an SAP performance degradation when using trigger-based replicate? And what was their solution, if so?
Not sure if I remember a lot of performance degradation. I'm not sure which side, if they're talking about the SAP side, the actual source environment, or the replicate server, the task. I do think that was there performance degradation? There might have been some due to volume, extremely massive volumes. I'm not quite sure. I think probably more details would need to be added here. We would have to get to know your environment and understand what your database environment is set up as, and how how far is, for example, replicate to the source of the SAP, because our best practice is that you always keep the replicate server closest to the source. It can be a little farther from the target, but so I think it depends on what you mean by SAP performance degradation. Is it the SAP environment or
Yeah, I think he replied like source side SAP. Yeah, I think we usually give that as internal parameter, we give that performance hints. Whatever the query hints that SAP uses, we provide that. We can use it, and yeah, that will enhance the performance.
Okay. I think the last question I believe Barbara is was typing it in, but we have some time real quick, so if she can answer this out loud. If full load is disabled and you can add a new column to a table and you resume the task, what happens to the table? Next question, does it continue CDC or fail or still forces a full load? And the next is another scenario when the target is, can't pronounce it from right
Kafka.
now. Kafka. Yes, thank you. You make changes to the source table column and use events options to start the task. What happens to the topic on the target side?
The first one is if a full load is disabled and you add a new column to a table and resume the task. So that's assuming the task got stopped and you're adding a new column. Replicate needs to go get, depends on where you added the column. Was the column added on the original table or was it added in a transformation? Well, Replicate should basically get that new metadata information and if it's been added to the original source table. But if it's been added, on the fly as a transformation, Replicate will probably try to refresh the target metadata for that table. Obviously, a full load won't kick in because full load is turned off, but it still may get fresh metadata. Does it continue CDC? Yeah, it should continue with CDC after it refreshes the target metadata. Or does it still force a full load? It can't force a full load, and if anything, it wouldn't be a real full load. It might be what they call a dummy full load, where it just goes back to the source to get fresh metadata if that new column was added on the original source table. Anyone else want to take number 2?
See, now that we similar, when target is Kafka, you make a change to the source column, add use events runtime. What happened to the topic on the target? Well, when you run events run option, I'm assuming events run option, it's going to be like from a timestamp or something like that. Anytime an event time option run, it's going to do a similar to what a fresh run, what we call it a fresh run. So it's going to drop the topic table when you run it from a timestamp in events run option. I think I answered that already, right there.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Go ahead, Manny.
Okay. Well, since there is no more questions, we will wrap up this Q&A with Qlik. We want you to I want you to look at the screen. Troy has the Q&A with Qlik that is coming up in November 28th on that Tuesday, and it is Qlik visualization. And we have Patrick, which I believe he was on the Test for Talk. He is locked in for that session. So please join us for that session. It should be very good. Also, I want you to bring to your attention the session survey for today. We ask you to you can scan that with your phone, is a QR code, and give us your feedback because we are looking to make the Q&A with Qlik even greater. Also, check out Qlik Community. Check out the Test for Talks. Tomorrow there is actually a one-on-one with the technical adoption specialist, Umberto. He is, and along with myself, we have we call a one-on-one test for workshops where we talk about and we get into some one-on-one deep things with some demos. You can actually register for that. You can't register for the one tomorrow as that is closed, but you can register for ones in the future. As also look out for Text for Talks, which is November 16th. That is with Troy Rainey, our host as well, and Also look at other, Qlik community. There's ideation, there's, support, there's the blogs. If you need more information, understanding on different topics, Qlik community is where you can go to get more information. We would also like to thank our panelists here. They were great, very knowledgeable, and we thank you for your time. And from myself, from Troy, the panelists, from Qlik, and myself, we say have a great day and thank you.